Hello, 603. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, how we use literature as windows and mirrors. Books are mirrors when they're populated with people who look and act like us. They reflect our lives, they reflect our values. We feel comfortable. We see ourselves in these books. Books are windows when they introduce us to people who don't look like us. They're different from us. They expand our worldview. They make us think from another point of view. One of the things I'd like you to do is think about the books of your childhood, elementary and high school. Think of your favorite books. How many of them were windows? How many of them were mirrors to another culture or another time? Actually, I can think of one of the windows for me was actually Dick and Jane. Dick and Jane were about kids who lived in a suburb behind a white picket fence. They had curly blonde hair and blue eyes. Their mom stayed at home. They had pets. It was very, very different from my environment growing up on a farm. I really don't remember a lot of mirrors in my childhood. But one of the things you'll want to do, and you may want to do this right now, is to pause and write down which of your favorite books were windows and which were mirrors. So, what's the message that you get from this? This is a story from a Bobbsey book. Black Deena, the jolly old cook of the Bobbsey family, came in from the kitchen just then with a plate of homemade cookies in her hand. All that ice and snow looked like winter, and no mistake. And what's this here thing? She asked, pointing to the igloo. One of them iggles I hears tell about. Flossie chuckled, and even Nan had to laugh. Not iggle, Deena. Igloo, the taller girl corrected. Think about this, a child correcting an adult, and the implication that black people were, of course, less educated and less intelligent. These were our books. Actually, I used to read a lot of the Bobbsey twins. So why do children need windows? It's because children come to school wrapped in the amniotic sac of their culture and their family. They know their own world. They need to be exposed to the world of others in order to grow. Why we read multicultural literature is because I love this quote, that reading makes us immigrants. It takes us to faraway lands. It shows us other places, and in fact, it finds a home for us everywhere. And also, the view that literature not only reflects society, it also helps to shape society. So here are the guides for selecting window and mirror books. Through books, children learn who or what society values and how children should see themselves and their worlds. Therefore, we should be very careful to know how books will affect the children. We need to be aware of the author's worldview. Very often the time period of the book was published is important because past books are very often very narrow. Publishing conventions, contemporary notions of children's literature, and societal attitudes. Just think of the topic of gay marriage. Some years ago, I remember the huge controversy about the book My Two Mommies. At this point, I would assume that that book finds its place in most elementary bookshelves. And at all times, we should be asking as we read these books, what are the hidden or implied ideas? Whose wins, who loses. To do this, we need to read through the eyes of a child, and that's what we're going to do in this course. So what I'd like you to do in preparation for our first class is to look at what your favorite childhood books were and the world that you saw through them, who was left out, who was represented, and then to think also about providing windows and mirrors for our students, especially what languages and cultures are reflected in your classroom. How many books do you have that provide mirrors? How many provide windows? And what happens if your class is mostly white middle class? How do you provide windows for them? If you take a little time to look at the viewing guide and jot down some ideas for that, you'll be ready for a spirited discussion during our first class.